Hi everybody, welcome to Chapter 8 for Organizational Theory. This is one of the weeks that we will not be meeting face-to-face in class, but I wanted to supplement it with some interesting lecture material for you. Basically, why I've picked to lecture the chapters that I'm going to lecture on in this course for face-to-face discussion. Basically what you're getting in this textbook and why I like it, you're getting concepts that you should have learned in your other doctoral level courses that didn't necessarily relate to organizational theory, but they were concepts like community climate, school reform, employee motivation, teacher motivation, evaluation. So because of that, I'm going to look at organizational change, which you had a class that dealt with organizational change. I'm going to look at this purely from a business perspective. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some educational studies, but I'm more or less targeting this as a business thing. And then I'm going to let you know sort of the ways that the business change can implement what you learned about in your other change class. And if organizational change is something you care about for your research, then this chapter is probably a good fit for you. If it's not, then you know what I've been saying since this class started. This is a class that's going to throw at you basically 400, 500 different theories. It's up to you to determine which ones fit and which ones work for you within the context of your interest in your research. So our textbook, one of the things that they said was that change itself is probably the biggest cause of stress for individuals within an organization. And as we saw when you read the BRIC textbook, you really saw that it was those veteran teachers that resisted the issue between tight and loose coupling when the government had more control and regulations over the school system. They couldn't handle the change, where the new teachers were much easier to adapt to it. So we need to talk about different types of change and why that causes people to get upset in their positions. Because if you're going to look at change, you have to at least address it from the other perspective, where we're saying that change might cause dissatisfaction. My dissertation that I completed basically said the same thing, but I looked at kind of change related to personnel causing stress. So it related to organizational change, but I did it more from a human resources perspective than an organizational perspective, if that makes sense. So 6 key ideas that cause organizations to change. We're going to talk about each one of them in different ways that they can lead to change, stress, all of this stuff. So we're going to talk about all of them. So the nature of the workforce is important to note. You're going to have 2 different types of populations that are changing the way that the general population of the workforce looks. Number one is that we have a much older population that is ready to retire. And that goes back to this whole concept of the aging baby boomer cohort that is going to continue to go until about 2025. So we have a significant amount of time still left that these individuals are basically deciding, do I want to stay working or do I not want to stay working? Then you also have the addition of cultural diversity that wasn't there before. Areas not used to cultural diversity are experiencing growths at a rapid rate in different types of populations through immigration, and that's causing changes to the workforce, which can cause stress on your organization. So technology, yes, technology is more readily available, but technology is cheaper than it's ever been before, and that's a positive. So if your organization wants to implement a new technology plan, it actually is much more inexpensive than it was in the 80s. If I was teaching this as a business course, would kind of look at what the cost of the first Apple IIc computers, and those of you that are around my age, you might have owned an Apple IIc computer. Well, the Apple IIc computer, when it came out in 85, 86, was $1,700. And imagine what that was like in the 80s. Think about it now, even though we have Macs that are $1,200, $1,300 anyway, they're still inexpensive compared to what they were in the 80s. So I think that's a consideration as well. Social media helps technology increase, and so much goes on social media. And different hours and different methods of communication increase as well. I'm teaching this class now. All of you that have gotten to know me know that I'm a night owl. I don't like to work in the morning. If I had my way, I would be up until 2 and 3 working, and it's why when I respond to your discussion board posts and things like that, you'll see that I tend to do it at like 1 and 2 in the morning. I'm just much more comfortable working late at night, but technology permits me to do that. In a day before technology, I couldn't do that. So that's changed our workforce as well. So the economic shocks, ebb and flow, things, house values go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. But the global housing market has collapsed as well. In European countries, basically they ran out of space to improve their property, and now the value of European homes have decreased as well. So the financial sector has faced serious problems in the United States. That's caused issues, that's caused challenges, and that can potentially change the culture of the workforce as well. So competition, it's interesting because from a business standpoint, the business person would tell you that mergers and acquisitions are one of the best things that you can do in business. Yet school districts are so reluctant to merge with other districts because of the programs they offer, the athletic support, that sort of thing. But in the business world, they'll tell you, you want to control competition, you try to consolidate, you try to merge, you try to acquire a different district, or organization, you try to bond together. But school districts haven't moved into that realm yet, and that's also caused them to consolidate staff, which has been a problem and challenge as well. So social trends, you have to understand that there's more emphasis on health and wellness programs. And this relates throughout our school system as well. Some of you probably have insurance models where your insurance models are basically saying, if you complete this checklist, these required things, then your health and wellness is going to be, you'll get a discount on your insurance. If you can prove that you're a non-smoker, you get a discount on your insurance. I worked at an institution that had a program in place that was called Healthy You, and if you demonstrated you were a non-smoker and committed to tests to prove that you were a non-smoker, you had about a 66% decrease on your insurance rate. This is coming more from the government and the business world, and it's funneling itself into our educational system as well. So this is something you have to consider. So world politics, business is just looked upon very negatively throughout the United States, but also the world. That kind of relates to ethics, which we've already spoken about a little bit in this class. So world politics can have an impact as well. So organizational change in schools, basically critics of organizational change have said more than anything else, schools are old-fashioned, they're not up to keep with the times, and that they have this bureaucratic model. But if you looked at kind of what we spoke about when we were talking about the loose and tight coupling earlier in the course, do schools really look that way? But most people see schools as that. So schools have to be stable, but they have to have change at the same time. And keeping that balance can be a difficult thing to do. So I give you some of the more important historical context for change. I already spoke about this earlier in the course, but you have to understand the big idea, which I've said a million times. The United States Constitution never mentioned education. And because of that, they gave all the power of education to the states. Meaning we have 50 unique structures and systems in place that are mandating how we conduct and operate in schools, but then we still have local influence and federal influence as well that's on top of it. So that's important, and that's one of the historical contexts that we've seen. So what is change? Change is planned and directed. It involves the whole organization. It increases the organization's capacity, and it's sustainable all over time. I think this is important because some of you might be interested in looking for your dissertations or research studies at the impact professional development has over a school. I argue that if you're looking at this stuff for change, you have to start at the beginning of the year. You have to take a year to gather data and explain to the whole organization how the change will take place. Sometimes you have to pilot the change, and then you wait till a third year to even implement the change. So that's the way that you can still create sustainability within the organization, but change it as well. So Planned change works best when it's implemented slowly. If employees contribute to the decisions behind it, it works better. If they can't, they're not going to be on board with it. And once again, we saw this when we looked at the BRIC study. The employees that felt like they were involved, they were more apt to be involved and contribute. Some did not feel involved, so they weren't. So when there is a new policy and procedure that impacts day-to-day operations, in theory, for that change to occur, it takes between 3 to 4 years in a school district. Not the case in the business world, but that's true for schools. So try to think about that. And if you need a perfect example of it, look at all the talk that's been going on at the state level on teacher evaluation and even principal evaluation. It took a long time for that to get established, and there's a reason why. It takes time for change. So there are going to be people that are resistant to change. If you're interested in this, there are 2 books that you have to read. You have to read Who Moved My Cheese and Our Iceberg is Melting. I'm a bigger fan of Our Iceberg is Melting. I think it's cute. It's a tale of penguins who have to move from one iceberg to another iceberg. It's a great book in looking at organizational culture and organizational change. I love it, but if this is something you're interested in, it's a quick, easy read. It's like a 45-minute to hour-long read that I think that you'll love. So if you're interested in organizational change, look up Our Iceberg is Melting. It's a great book. So you're going to have no-nos who do not want to be involved in the change process. So what you have to do is help them overcome resistance to the change. Effective communication happens when you tell the employees in a meeting and you tell them face-to-face and you have a representative that's speaking for them. If you're in a bigger district, the superintendent can meet with all faculty and all staff in one location and can be open about the change. It's going to be more beneficial to the employees of the district. And then after that, you should follow up with an email as well. And it's important that you do it both. I would always do it directly first, then follow up with an email. That way it is in writing and you've documented that the change is going to occur, but you've also had a chance to confront people face-to-face and express it, because then you're communicating appropriately and you're educating them on the change as well. So all employees should participate in changes within an organization. If there's a training and development program available, that's something that you should certainly fund and pay for. But if you're going to expect people to change, you better provide them with the support, both emotionally and financially, to prepare for that change. So our book has a couple of suggestions if somebody doesn't work with the support and commitment. They suggested doing individual counseling and therapy for the person to help them prepare for the change. And they also said, give them a leave of absence until the change is put in place. Now, mind you, this is looking at it from a business perspective, but in schools, you can't exactly give a principal a 3-year leave of absence until a teacher evaluation system is put in place. So maybe the counseling and therapy comes from, the concept of the mentor principal that's in another building that's working with you. But the leave of absence, I don't necessarily see that working in a school environment. So in business that might work, but in a school that's going to be near impossible. So this is simple. This is a no-brainer. If you trust your boss, you're going to do the changes they suggest. Easy enough. But the challenge when it comes to schools is that if you have an individual who comes in fresh and they try to implement change, you will not get anywhere near as much buy-in as you would. So that's an argument why I keep coming back to this concept of succession planning and promotion from within, because then you have somebody who's established trust within the organization and who can then implement the change more efficiently and effectively. So change must be fair. There has to be, employees have to think that it's fair to them, that the weight of the world is not on their shoulders. And they have to make sure that there aren't promotions or demotions that are promised because of change. And that can be scary as well. So the other thing that our book mentions that I think is an interesting notion is that you use manipulation as a solution if all other techniques fail. Basically, they call it manipulation, but it's more or less taking people who don't like change, giving them a key role. You're going to be the leader in helping us do this, and then that makes them feel like they belong and they're a part of it, and then that's going to help them be involved in the change process as well. If an employee feels they've been manipulated, they're less likely to work for you, so that can be a challenge as well. So, who do you pick? You pick the people who are most likely to get on board. If people are unwilling to accept the change, you leave them behind, and that's what most business research will tell you. Correlation with age or experience, there can be, and if there is a correlation with age or experience, that's something that you want to certainly look at. So that's a possibility here.